My billionaire grandfather left a fortune of $3 billion to his driver. But there was one condition. He had to survive 48 hours in the mansion with our family. On the first night, his car brakes failed completely. My name is Thomas Whitmore, and I need to tell this story before it's too late, before someone else dies. Because what happened in that mansion over the last 2 days changed everything I thought I knew about my family. It all started 3 weeks ago when my grandfather, Richard Whitmore, died at 89 years old. He owned Whitmore Industries, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. The man had enough money to buy entire cities. And all of us, his family, were waiting for the moment of the will reading, like vultures waiting for their next meal. I'm not going to lie to you, I needed that money. My design company was going bankrupt. I owed almost $2 million to banks and investors. That inheritance was my only chance to start over. And I wasn't alone in that desperation. My sister Caroline was there too. She had just divorced her third husband, and he had taken half her money in the process. She was practically bankrupt, living in a rented apartment after years of living in mansions. My cousin James was also present. He had lost everything in illegal gambling and owed money to very dangerous people. People who don't accept excuses. He had 3 months to pay, or, well, you understand. And there was Aunt Margot, my grandfather's younger sister. She had always been the black sheep of the family. Addicted to pills, she had spent the last 20 years going in and out of rehab clinics. She needed money not just to pay bills, but to support her addictions. Lastly, there was my grandfather's wife, Helena. She was only 45 years old. She had married him 5 years ago, when he was already 84. Everyone in the family knew she was only interested in the money, but my grandfather seemed happy, so nobody said anything openly. The family lawyer, Dr. Morrison, scheduled the will reading for a Monday afternoon at my grandfather's mansion itself. The house was enormous, with 42 rooms, gardens that seemed endless, and an atmosphere that always made me uncomfortable. It was as if the walls kept secrets. When we arrived, everyone was tense. Nobody talked properly, just fake smiles and empty hugs, each of us mentally calculating how much money we would receive. Dr. Morrison gathered us in the library. That room had always been my favorite place in the mansion. Mahogany shelves from floor to ceiling, filled with old books, a huge fireplace, leather armchairs that seemed to embrace you when you sat down. But that day, the room felt different, darker, heavier. The lawyer opened a leather folder and took out a sealed envelope. He broke the seal and began reading in that formal voice that lawyers have. I, Richard Whitmore, being in full use of my mental faculties, declare this as my last will and testament. All of us leaned forward. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I have observed my family for many years. I saw greed grow. I saw the love of money replace the love for each other. Therefore, I decided to do something different. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't sounding good. I leave my entire fortune, including Whitmore Industries shares, properties, investments, and bank accounts, totaling approximately $3 billion, to Miguel Santos, my driver and faithful friend for the last 15 years. The silence that fell in the room was deafening. Nobody could process what they had just heard. I looked around and saw the same expressions of shock on all faces. Miguel was sitting in the corner of the room. He was 52 years old, gray-haired, and had always been a quiet and polite man. At that moment, he was pale, looking as shocked as we were. Caroline was the first to explode. "This is ridiculous. This can't be legal. He was senile, clearly manipulated." Dr. Morrison raised his hand. "Please let me finish. There is a condition." Helena stood up from her chair. "What kind of condition?" "Miguel Santos must spend exactly 48 hours in this mansion, in the company of the Whitmore family, starting today at 6 p.m. If he survives, pardon me, if he remains during this entire period without leaving the property, the fortune will be his. If he leaves before the deadline, or if something happens that prevents him from completing the 48 hours, the fortune will be divided equally among the family members present here." Something in the way he said, "if he survives," made me feel nauseous. It was as if my grandfather knew exactly what he was doing, as if he was testing not Miguel, but us. James gave a sarcastic laugh. "So that's it? He stays here for 2 days and takes $3 billion, while the real family gets nothing. There's one more thing, Dr. Morrison continued. Richard left individual letters for each of you. They must be opened only in your rooms, in private. And he left specific instructions. Any attempt at coercion, violence, or sabotage against Miguel Santos will result in complete disinheritance of the responsible person. The property has security cameras in all common spaces, and I will have access to the footage. Furthermore, I have hired security guards who will be positioned around the property. They will not interfere, but they are watching. This was a test. My grandfather was testing us. He wanted to see how far we would go. That night, after the extremely uncomfortable dinner, where nobody barely touched the food, I went to the room I always used when visiting the mansion. I found an envelope on the bed with my name written in my grandfather's shaky handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. Thomas, my dear grandson, you were always the most sensitive of the family, the only one who seemed to care about something other than money. But even in you, I saw greed grow in recent years. I saw how your financial problems changed you. This test is not just for Miguel. It's for all of you. Observe yourselves. Observe what you're capable of when money is at stake. And remember, not everything is what it seems. Pay attention. The most important truths are hidden in the shadows. With love, Grandpa Richard. I woke up badly. I couldn't sleep right. I spent the whole night thinking about that letter. What did he mean by, not everything is what it seems? At breakfast, the tension was even worse. Miguel was sitting at the table with us, and each person looked at him as if he were an intruder. Technically, he was still just the driver, but in less than 48 hours, he would be the owner of all of that. Helena kept staring at him with a mixture of anger and something else I couldn't identify. Contempt, perhaps, or fear. After breakfast, Miguel said he was going to take a drive around the property. He always liked driving. It was his way of relaxing. He grabbed the keys to one of the garage cars, a black Mercedes my grandfather loved, and left. I was in the library when I heard the noise, a horrible crash coming from the front garden. I ran to the window and saw the Mercedes crashed against a tree. The front of the car was completely destroyed. All of us ran outside. Miguel was getting out of the car, staggering, with a cut on his forehead, bleeding. But he was alive. The brakes, he said, breathing with difficulty. The brakes didn't work. I pressed and nothing happened. Dr. Morrison, who was in the mansion supervising everything, immediately called a trusted mechanic. The man arrived in an hour and inspected the car. His verdict was clear. Someone cut the brake line. This wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. Everyone started accusing each other. Caroline was yelling at James. James was yelling at Helena. Aunt Margot was in a corner, shaking and asking for her pills. And Miguel was sitting on the entrance steps, holding a towel against his forehead, seeming to realize for the first time that his life was in real danger. Dr. Morrison gathered all of us again in the library. This is exactly what Richard predicted. He knew you would do anything for money. The security cameras don't cover the garage, unfortunately. It was an intentional choice by Richard. He wanted to see how far you would go without direct witnesses. But let me be clear. If Miguel dies or is forced to leave, I guarantee all of you will be investigated, and the culprit won't see a penny. That night, nobody slept right. I stayed in my room, listening to every sound of the mansion, the old wooden floors creaking, the wind hitting the windows, and footsteps, always footsteps in the hallways. Around 3 in the morning, I heard Miguel's bedroom door open. I peeked into the hallway and saw a hooded figure entering his room. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone to call Dr. Morrison, but then I hesitated. What if I was seeing wrong? What if it was just Miguel going out to get water? But then I heard a muffled scream. I ran to his room and opened the door at once. The hooded figure was on top of Miguel, with a pillow pressed against his face. Miguel was struggling, trying to breathe. "Get off him," I shouted, turning on the room light. The person dropped the pillow and ran toward the door, pushing me hard against the wall. I fell to the floor, and when I got up, the person had already disappeared into the dark hallway. Miguel was coughing, breathing with difficulty, but alive. "Who was it?" he asked between coughs. I couldn't see the face. They were wearing a hood. Dr. Morrison was called again. This time, he brought the security guards inside the mansion. They would make rounds every hour. "Just 36 more hours," Dr. Morrison said to Miguel. "You can do it. Stay in common spaces. Don't be alone." But how could he stay safe when everyone in the house wanted him gone? The next morning, we started investigating each other. I confronted Caroline in the garden. "Where were you last night at 3 in the morning?" "In my room, sleeping. Where else would I be?" "Someone tried to suffocate Miguel, a person wearing a hood." She crossed her arms. "And you think it was me?" "Thomas, I may need money, but I'm not a murderer." "Everyone here needs money, Caroline, and everyone here has motive." She approached me, lowering her voice. "You too, little brother. You're bankrupt. Your company is sinking. You owe millions. Don't pretend you're better than the rest of us." She was right. I also had motive, and for a terrible second, I caught myself thinking, what if Miguel simply didn't finish the 48 hours? What if something happened to him? I could save my company, my life. I shook my head, trying to get rid of those thoughts. I wasn't like that. I couldn't be. But did any of us really know ourselves? Did we know how far we were capable of going? In the afternoon, I found James smoking on the back terrace. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Let me guess. If I tried to kill Miguel." "Did you?" He took a long drag on his cigarette. "Thomas, I owe $5 million to loan sharks, who will rip off my fingers one by one if I don't pay in the next few weeks. Yes, I want Miguel gone. But no, I wasn't stupid enough to try something that would leave evidence." "Then who was it?" "Could be anyone. Helena is desperate to maintain her lifestyle. Aunt Margot needs money for drugs. Caroline is bankrupt. You're bankrupt. We all have motives." He put out his cigarette on the railing. The old man was a genius. He turned all of us into suspects. And in the end, we'll all destroy each other because of it. That night, during dinner, the lights went out. The entire mansion went dark. I heard screams, people moving, chairs falling. When the light came back on 30 seconds later, Miguel was on the floor, holding his neck. There was a deep scratch, bleeding, and next to him on the floor was a piece of broken glass. "Someone tried to cut my throat," he said, voice trembling. In the dark, I felt the hand in the glass. We all looked around the table. Everyone was there. Everyone could have done that in the 30 seconds of darkness. Dr. Morrison inspected the wound. It wasn't deep enough to be fatal, but it had been intentional. Someone had tried to kill Miguel and failed. "Only 18 hours left," the lawyer said. "Miguel, do you want to give up? Nobody would judge you. Your life is worth more than any amount of money." Miguel wiped the blood from his neck with a napkin. "No, I'm going to finish this. If Richard believed in me enough to leave me everything, I'm not going to disappoint his memory." That night, Miguel locked his bedroom door and placed a chair against it. I did the same. I didn't trust anyone in that house anymore. But around midnight, I heard voices in the hallway, whispering voices. I opened the door very slowly and saw two figures talking at the end of the hallway near the stairs. I couldn't see who they were, but I recognized one of the voices. It was Helena. "Tomorrow morning," she was saying, "it's our last chance. If he completes the 48 hours, it's over for all of us." "What if we give him something? Something that seems natural?" the other voice responded. I couldn't identify who it was. "Margot can get the right pills. Nobody would suspect." My blood froze. They were planning to poison Miguel. I closed the door slowly and leaned against it, breathing deeply. I needed to warn someone. But who? Dr. Morrison was sleeping in the guest room on the other side of the mansion. The guards were outside. By the time I alerted someone, it could be too late. I decided to stay awake all night and keep watch. I wouldn't let them do this, but my eyes were heavy. The exhaustion from the last 2 days finally hit me. I tried to fight the sleep, but ended up dozing off in the chair. I woke up to the sound of an ambulance. I ran downstairs and found everyone gathered in the kitchen. Miguel was lying on the floor, unconscious. Paramedics were around him, trying to stabilize him. "What happened?" I shouted. "He had breakfast and passed out," Caroline said, tears streaming down her face. "Someone put something in his food." The paramedics rushed Miguel to the hospital. Dr. Morrison went along, and we stayed there in the mansion, waiting for news. 2 hours later, the lawyer called. "Miguel will survive. It was a large dose of sedatives, but it wasn't enough to kill him. He's awake and insists on coming back to complete the last 4 hours." Helena cursed. Aunt Margot started crying. Miguel returned to the mansion at noon, still pale and weak, but determined. Only 4 hours remained until the 48 hours were complete. "Who did this?" he asked, looking at each of us. "Who put sedatives in my food?" Nobody answered. Dr. Morrison hit the table. "Enough, this has gone too far. I'm going to review all the security footage. I'll find out who's behind this, if it's the last thing I do." He left for the office where he had set up his monitoring system. We all stayed in the living room watching each other. Nobody trusted anyone. With each passing minute, the tension grew. 3:30 in the afternoon, half an hour left. That's when Dr. Morrison came back to the room. His face was white. "I need to show you something." He turned on the TV and connected his laptop. On the screen, he started playing security camera footage from the last 2 days. "Watch," he said. We saw Miguel taking the car on the first morning. We saw him entering and leaving the garage. But we didn't see anyone cutting the brakes because there were no cameras there. Then we saw the hallway on the night of the suffocation attempt. We saw a hooded figure enter Miguel's room. But the image quality in the dark was terrible. Couldn't identify. We saw the dinner when the lights went out. And then we saw something none of us expected. The footage showed Helena discreetly getting up from the table 3 minutes before the lights went out. She had left the dining room. When the lights went out, she wasn't there. "Where were you?" James asked, turning to Helena. I had gone to the bathroom." "The bathroom is on the other side. You went toward the light box." "No, I didn't turn off the lights. Why would I do that?" Dr. Morrison continued playing the footage, and then he showed something that made my stomach turn. It was Helena at 5 in the morning that day, entering the kitchen. She opened her purse and took out a small bottle. She poured the contents into the coffee that was ready for breakfast. "No," Helena said, standing up. "No, this isn't right. I didn't do this." "The cameras don't lie," Dr. Morrison said. Helena started crying. Okay, yes, it was me. I put sedatives in the coffee, but it wasn't to kill, just to make him sleep and miss the deadline. I didn't try to kill anyone." "And the brakes?" I asked. "Did you cut the brakes too?" "No, that wasn't me, I swear. And the suffocation attempt wasn't either. I only put the sedative, nothing else." Caroline stood up. "Then who cut the brakes? Who tried to suffocate him?" That's when Miguel spoke, with a voice I had never heard coming from him. A calm voice, but with something dangerous underneath. "I cut the brakes." All of us turned to him. "What?" I said. "I cut the car's brakes, and I faked the suffocation attempt." "Thomas, when you entered the room, I was alone. The person you saw fleeing was a fantasy I created. I had prepared dark clothes in the closet. When you burst into the room, I took advantage of your confusion to simulate that someone had fled." My brain couldn't process what I was hearing. "But Mom, why?" Miguel smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "Because Richard asked me to. He knew exactly how each of you would react. He wanted to expose the true nature of this family. He spent the last months planning this with me. The cut breaks were just the beginning. We needed you to believe someone was trying to kill me. We needed to create paranoia, and it worked perfectly. The neck injury? Caroline asked, voice trembling. I did it myself with the piece of glass when the lights went out. It wasn't difficult, and the timing was perfect because Helena had turned off the lights at that moment. She made my job easier without even knowing it. Aunt Margot was holding her chest, breathing with difficulty. So you were working with Richard. This was all a test. Not just a test, a trial. Richard wanted each of you to reveal who you really are. And you revealed. Helena tried to poison me. I heard you and James talking about it, Helena. Margot provided the sedatives. Caroline offered James money to scare me. And James went to the garage before me on the first morning. I saw on the external cameras that Dr. Morrison showed me privately. You also did something to the car. James turned red. I didn't cut the brakes. No, you didn't cut them, because I had already cut them. But you loosened the steering wheel bolts. If I had tried to make a sharper turn, the steering wheel would have come off completely. The brakes not working made me go straight into the tree. But if the steering wheel had also come loose, I would have rolled over and probably died. The silence in the room was absolute. And Thomas? Miguel looked at me. You're the only one who did nothing, the only one who tried to protect me. Richard was right about you. He said you still had something good inside, even with your financial problems. Tears burned in my eyes. I didn't know if it was relief or sadness. Dr. Morrison looked at his watch. It's 4 o'clock. The 48 hours are over. Miguel, officially, the fortune is yours. Miguel nodded. But there's one more thing you need to know. Richard left a second letter. I asked Dr. Morrison to only read it after all this was over. The lawyer took another envelope from the folder. He opened it and began reading. If you're hearing this, it means my plan worked. You revealed who you really are. Helena, you tried to poison an innocent man for money. James, you tried to sabotage a car, risking a life. Caroline, you conspired. Margot, you provided drugs for a crime. For these acts, all of you are officially disinherited. You will not receive a single penny. But Thomas, you tried to do the right thing. Therefore, I leave you 10% of the fortune, $300 million. Use it wisely, rebuild your life, and remember that character is worth more than any fortune. I couldn't breathe. $300 million. Enough to save my company 1,000 times over. Enough to start over completely. And as for the rest, Dr. Morrison continued reading. Miguel Santos will receive 60% of the fortune, $1.8 billion. He was my true friend for 15 years. He deserves every penny. The remaining 30% will be donated to charity, to institutions that help people who really need it, not parasites who just want easy money. Helena fell to her knees crying. James punched the wall. Caroline simply stared into nothing, in shock. Aunt Margot started shaking violently, probably going into withdrawal. And me? I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Guilt? Sadness for my family? Miguel approached me and placed his hand on my shoulder. Richard liked you very much, Thomas. He told me you were the only one with a chance to save yourself. Don't waste this opportunity. 3 months have passed since that day. My company was saved. I paid all the debts and still had enough money left to expand. Helena and James are being prosecuted for attempted murder. Margot is in a rehab clinic, this time paid by the state. Caroline moved to another country, trying to start over without money and without pride. And Miguel donated half of his money to build schools and hospitals. He said he didn't need that much. He said true wealth isn't measured in money. I still visit the mansion sometimes. Dr. Morrison gives me access when I need it. I walk through the empty hallways and think about everything that happened. I think about how my grandfather managed, even after death, to teach the greatest lesson any of us ever learned. Money reveals who you really are, and most people don't like what they see when the mirror is finally placed in front of them. My grandfather was a genius. A cruel genius perhaps, but a genius nonetheless. He turned his will into a trial, and in the end, only those who deserved it were rewarded. If you ever have that chance, make the right choice, because some decisions can't be undone, and some tests reveal truths you can no longer hide. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more stories like this.